Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be working on the even moss crochet stitch. Now the even moss consists of a slip stitch and half double crochet stitches. This is a really great fabric if you want something that's more dense, doesn't have a lot of holes. This is also really good for home decor projects, and it's also really good for a lot of color work. So if you want to be able to incorporate a lot of colors, this is the ticket. All right, so for our multiple, it needs to be any even number. Doesn't matter how wide your project is, as long as your starting chain is in an even number, you're good to go. For my sample today, I'm going to do 14, and I'm going to do this off screen, and I'll meet you back here for row 1. Okay, so for row number 1, we need to start the second chain from the hook. Now remember, this loop here on your hook never counts as a stitch, so count down 1 and 2, and we're going to start with a slip stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 2 loops on your hook. Take that first loop and pull it through the second loop. That is your slip stitch. In the chain next to that, we're doing a half double crochet, so yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. You got 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. That's your half double crochet. In the chain next to that, we'll do a slip stitch again. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops, pull through the second loop. Again, half double crochet. We're going to yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. Next is the slip stitch. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through the second loop. Again, half double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. And that's all you need to do is continue to alternate your slip stitches and your half double crochets until you get to that last stitch. So let's just keep moving along here, and once we get to that stitch, I will show you how to finish off row 1, and we will move on to row number 2. Okay, so when you get to the end of your first row, you should have 1 stitch left, and this needs to be a slip stitch. Rows always end with a slip stitch. So if it is not, you'll need to go back and you'll need to check your work. You can tell which ones are slip stitches and which ones are half double crochets. Slip stitches have a little bit more of a gap in the starting chain. Half double crochets do not. So make sure that you're on track to end with a slip stitch. I am, so I'm going to put my slip stitch into that last stitch in my chain here, and then I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to turn my work, and now we're ready to move on to row number 2. Row number 2 is going to be your repeat through the entire length of your project, and it is super easy. Just like our first row, we're going to start with a slip stitch, and you can tell which ones are slip stitches and which ones are half double crochets. You see that little bar there? Now, if you look at the top of row 1, there are the V's for the half double crochet. Underneath that is going to be a bar, always for half double crochet. If it doesn't have a bar, that's a slip stitch. Bar, half double crochet. Okay, so working into that slip stitch from the row below, we're going to start with our slip stitch. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, pull that first loop through your second loop, and it might be a little tricky because it's along the edge there, but you got it. And then half double crochet, and then slip stitch, half double crochet, and again, you just want to keep alternating these stitches until you get to the very last stitch in the row. Okay, so this is our last stitch in row number 2, and you want to make sure that you get the stitch. This will be a slip stitch, and it can be a really easy stitch to miss. So my recommendation is, if you're having a hard time keeping track of these, put a stitch marker in it. And this stitch can also be a little on the tight side, folks. So I just kind of bully my way into it, and then I finish that slip stitch, and then I chain 1 and turn. So that is the end of row 2, and at this point you can continue to repeat row 2 till you get to the length that you want, or you can change colors, and changing colors is really easy. So I have that last stitch on row number 2, and I'm going to start my slip stitch by putting my hook in there, yarning over, pulling up a loop, but I'm going to stop right there. And I want to grab the next color that I want to use on this, and I'm just going to drape it over my hook, and then I'm going to pull it through both of those loops. Now I'm not going to cut off that white because I do plan on using it again, and I will carry it up the side. So once I have that pulled through both of those loops, I'm just going to chain 1 and turn. And just like with row 2, we're going to start with a slip stitch in our first stitch and then a half double crochet in the next stitch. And then we'll just continue to alternate those stitches until we get to the end of our row. And that's it. I think this is a pretty easy stitch, so I think that just about does it for me. If you missed anything, feel free to go back and rewatch. I will have links down in the description below for written instructions, as well as even moss patterns in the Ruby Grace shop. Thank you so much for stopping by. Love your face.